Welcome to the Nation ASEAN Plus. I'm Jessie Chahal at Wisma Bernama here in Kuala Lumpur, the home of Malaysia's national news agency. This week, we break down the stories that made waves across ASEAN, bringing you key insights from this dynamic and diverse region. Now, major developments are unfolding, and let's start here in Malaysia. The Prime Minister, Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, says the Madani government remains committed to ensuring every investment delivers tangible benefits for the people and for future generations. In a statement, he highlighted Malaysia's strong performance for the first 9 months of 2025, with approved investments reaching 285 billion ringgit, a 13% increase and the highest on record. High-value sectors contributed nearly 138 billion ringgit, while investment missions generated 24.5 billion ringgit in potential projects, positioning Malaysia for sustained economic momentum. Meanwhile, the MARC Ratings has affirmed Malaysia's unsolicited sovereign rating at AAA with a stable outlook pointing to strong and resilient credit fundamentals. The agency says Malaysia's diversified economy, sound monetary policy and resilient financial system continue to support steady growth heading into 2026. The ringgit has strengthened about 8% this year, aided by current account surpluses and low foreign currency debt. Now, MARC notes the stable outlook hinges on sustained growth and continued fiscal discipline. Well, moving on, according to IPPFA's 2026 Economic Pulse report, Malaysia's economy is projected to grow between 4.3 and 4.5% in 2026, driven mainly by domestic demand. The advisory firm says growth will be anchored by the 13th Malaysia Plan and Visit Malaysia 2026, which is expected to inject up to 21 billion ringgit into private consumption. With inflation easing and the ringgit projected to strengthen to 4 ringgit 5 sen, Malaysia's outlook will depend increasingly on effective policy execution. Well, in other news, Malaysia's leading index rose 3.6% in October this year to 116.2 points, signalling stronger economic momentum heading into 2026. The Department of Statistics says the increase was driven by double-digit growth in approved housing units, rail imports of precious and non-ferrous metals, as well as semiconductors. The index also rebounded month-on-month, rising 2.6% after 2 months of decline. The DOSM says the stronger trend reflects improving economic activity across services, manufacturing and intermediate goods imports. Now, Malaysia's digital infrastructure and policy stability are attracting technology and digital investment. The Communications Minister, Datuk Fahmi Fadzil, says the National Digital Network Initiative and the Jendela Phase 1 and Phase 2 delivered results. He said the 21 billion ringgit Jendela program expands broadband, improves 4G and phases out 3G services.
The estimated number of 5G users now is maybe in the tune of out of 45 million accounts, maybe about almost 60% are 5G users. And this is fantastic given that some countries like South Korea took 4 or 5 years to reach about 60%. It took us about 1 year. Malaysia has some of the fastest internet in the region and some of the cheapest in the internet in the world. It's no wonder that we are deeply and very widely connected society. Some applications like WhatsApp has penetration of over 94%.
Yeah, highest. WhatsApp is the highest.
One of the highest in the region, if not the world.
Yeah.
On another development, the Investment, Trade and Industry Ministry has reaffirmed its commitment to sustainable governance with the release of the MITI Sustainability Report 2024. Malaysia recorded 370.5 billion ringgit in approved investments last year, while exports rose 5.7% to 1.5 trillion ringgit. MITI also highlighted internal progress, including 70% female representation in senior management and significant reductions in water usage and operational waste. The report outlines key initiatives supporting Malaysia's net zero ambition by the year 2050, along with a new ESG Excellence Award to strengthen responsible business practices nationwide. Well, Mars Wings will officially transition to Air Borneo on January 1st, 2026, following the completion of the ownership transfer between the Malaysia Aviation Group and the Sarawak government. From that date, Air Borneo will assume full legal and operational responsibility for all services previously managed by Mars Wings, including flight operations, customer service and passenger matters. Mars Wings branding may still appear during the early phase as Air Borneo introduces its new identity. MAG says it remains committed to supporting seamless regional connectivity for Sarawak and surrounding communities. I'll be back in a moment with more of the week's stories from across ASEAN, and ahead on the program we take a closer look at Malaysia's new move to regulate big tech. That's a shift that will bring major platforms under local licensing laws beginning 2026. I speak with Dr. SASHI Tharmalingam, the Information Technology Service Management expert, to understand what this means for platforms, for users and for online safety. We'll be back right after these messages. You're watching ASEAN Plus right here on Bernama TV. Welcome back. You're watching The Nation. Now we're turning to Malaysia's shift involving big tech. That's a move that will bring social media and messaging giants under Malaysian licensing laws beginning January 2026. Well, to help us understand what this means for platforms, for users and for future of digital governance, we're now joined by Dr. SASHI Tharmalingam, Information Technology Service Management expert. Dr. SASHI, thank you so much for being with us here today and weighing in on this topic, of course, that affects us one way or the other, since everyone is on some sort of messaging platform these days. Now, starting January 2026, which is not very far away from where we are today, big messaging and social media platforms will automatically fall under Malaysian law. What exactly is changing in this aspect, and why is it timely for it to happen now?
From January 1st, 2026, social media and messaging application platforms must comply to Malaysian law. Particularly, we are looking at two laws, which is Online Safety Act 2024 and Communication and Multimedia Act 1998 via Section 46A deeming provisions, which makes examples of the social media networks like Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, TikTok, YouTube, Telegram to become under the licensing regime.
Right. So when you mention a few of those apps and platforms, when we look at things like WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all these platforms or apps are going to be affected. When they become licensed, what does that actually require from the companies? And will users notice any difference at all? Is it going to change the way we interact with these messaging platforms?
I'll answer the second question first. The users will not be affected in any way. However, all these platforms are operating with contents coming from the users. So the platforms which are deemed as an application service provider, ASP, under the Class C license holder, they will be required to comply with the local regulations, and they should have a local representation, they have to apply age gating, parental controls, and content moderation. In terms of ensuring security, they also have to implement eKYC in terms of knowing your customer, and they have to be more vigilant on scam ads in terms of limiting them or eradicating them. And finally, they have to have a complaint system to address any complaints that are coming from the users.
Right. And so from what I gather, mostly that is happening on the platform end and not so much from the users. It is more to ensure there are safety nets and guidelines for these platforms to operate, correct?
Yes, definitely. There's no major impact on privacy. That's probably the most important question the users will pose. And about the freedom of expression, there is no rules applied to that. And in terms of ensuring fairness and safety and censorship, there is no censorship will be applied using these laws, but the platform should be more accountable on the contents that they are posting.
Right. As an expert in this area, and I know that you are very much concerned about the usage and the consumption of content online as well. Should Malaysians be concerned about any form or any level of tighter control over their personal data or content? You've already pointed out that there shall be no impact on freedom or privacy. But should there be any concern? And would you take these measures that are being implemented as progressive, as a good exercise?
It is definitely a progressive move by the government in terms of regulating any social media applications or the messaging applications. This is particularly because we are hearing from the people complaints of cyberbullying, scams, child exploitation, and all those things which are affecting the users. So users rightfully should be supporting this move to ensure that the safety of the contents which are being hosted by this platform are ensured, and the platforms are more accountable to the contents that they are hosting without washing their hands when things goes wrong.
Yeah, there has been a lot of conversation, as well as we see some countries and even for us here in Malaysia where preventive steps are taken to protect children and families. Why is it important to make global platforms, as we mentioned earlier, the likes of the YouTubes and the TikToks, why is it important to make these platforms legally accountable here in Malaysia? And really, what sort of enhancement of protection and safety are we about to experience?
What we are looking at is protecting the children and families by making the platform more responsible to any harmful contents. At present, the platforms may not be regulated, so they can always say that the contents that are hosted on their platform is not of their responsibility. However, in terms of harmful content, which, as I mentioned earlier, involves cyberbullying, scams, and exploitation of child, it should be more stringent in terms of ensuring the contents are regulated. And the platform should also play their own role in ensuring these contents are going through a moderation process before it reaches our people. Platforms, when they are made accountable, we have to look at the penalties that the Communications and Multimedia Act can impose, including 500,000 fine, 5 years jail, and for ongoing breaches, they can be fined up to 1,000 per day. And these also will result in license revocation and making their senior officers liable for contents which are damaging the Malaysian public.
Well, let's put that focus on ASEAN. Several ASEAN countries are also regulating big tech. Is Malaysia aligned with the region, or are we taking a slightly different approach, a stronger approach perhaps? And could this then help to shape wider ASEAN standards?
Malaysia in particular are aligning with the ASEAN peers like Singapore and Indonesia, but we enforce stricter mandatory compliance compared to the flexible regional codes which are in practice in other countries. Singapore, for example, have already required all the big tech to follow their local laws, and Malaysia adds document-based ID verification that will become more powerful in terms of ensuring that we are aligning with the peers in ASEAN as well as the world.
Well, Dr. Sashi, regulations only matter if they can be, in a word you just used, enforced, if they can be implemented. What practical changes will platforms actually need to make once the rule takes effect? And how can we make sure that this regulations are complied with and they're actually happening in real time? Are the users privy to any of this enforcement or implementation?
That's a great question. At present, all the social media as well as the messaging application companies are operating away from Malaysia. In such manner, they may not be subjected to our laws and rules. However, with the new regulations, the platform must appoint local contacts. That means the local companies or representative will be held responsible on any issues that are arising from their platform. They also have to implement eKYC. This will definitely ensure that the number of fake accounts without the KYC, know your customer, being now moderated better. In terms of age gating, the platforms will be subjected to above 16 years of age as the normal users. So users below 16 years will not be able to open or maintain any social media and messaging applications going forward. And breaches may lead to fine, suspension, or even prosecution, as I said earlier.
How do you welcome this new rules, so to say, and as an expert weighing in, what is your biggest observation and takeaway from this?
The issue is seen as a user as well as parent. So as a parent, we can expect a stronger child safety measures online. And it also, as an expert, I can say it creates a safer digital environment for Malaysians, especially children, because they are now exposed to a lot of contents that are being fed to them through the social networks, particularly social networks like TikTok and YouTube. By making these platforms legally accountable without disrupting the daily use, the platforms will now be a more safer place for our children to get contents, and it also should give the freedom for the parent to allow the children to use certain contents in a regulated manner.
But one point to note here that there perhaps is a blind spot, and that is that it does not mean that because these rules are in place that we can submit to these platforms to verify or safeguard the content that appears on our screens, correct?
That's definitely, because as we always say, the content is a user's asset. It is from the user to the platform. If the users are responsible in posting the contents which are deemed good and not offensive, they should not be worried. Users will always have control in the first cut before the platforms are being held responsible for the contents hosted in their platforms.
Dr. Sashi, it's been an interesting conversation, and of course parents especially will welcome these regulations as we hope for more moderated and safer content that goes on our screens. Thank you for your insights, and hope to speak to you soon.
Most welcome.
Well, as Malaysia steps into a more regulated digital landscape, the goal remains balancing innovation with safety, as well as to ensure users can trust the platforms they depend on every day. Well, I'm off to another quick break. I'll be back with more updates from around ASEAN.